Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast. Let's see. So hour number one today, we're going to be talking about at a student's request. Multiple students have requested. And we talk about the 303 tractor hydraulic fluid, fraud and criminal activities perpetrated on us by corporations. And hour number two, Stuart's going to be joining us and telling us his story, starting life at age 15 with 37 cents. That'll be hour number two. So we get a chance to meet some of my friends. Well, you've met some of them, and you'll meet Stuart today. Kyle, are you with us today?
I am.
Great. I was hoping to chat with Jason and find out if you were here, but I just found out when I just asked you. Yes. Did you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say, can you hear me is all.
I can hear you 5 by 5. Now, we were hoping to be able to talk about buying a used car today. I don't know if we're going to have time for that. And I just want to let everybody know that, this scandal perpetrated by a bunch of corporations on little people, bottom 93%, is unbelievable. Now, this is not something that I've just read about and I'm regurgitating on the air. I was in the middle of it. I was part of it. Our farm was harmed by it. Our equipment was damaged by it. And it makes me angry just to think about what these guys have done. And, I wanted to say, well, the retailers weren't involved in this. It was really just Citgo, the manufacturer of the products, but that's not true. The retailers were involved on it. Now, I have a stack of documents about a half-inch thick right here on the studio desk. And these are copies of correspondence, emails, etc., that came from Citgo, from the refinery. And my name is in it. And because I complained about the fluid, tractor hydraulic fluid. So let me just tell you, Citgo, C-I-T-G-O, is a petroleum company that is a United States-based refiner and marketer of transportation fuels, lubricants, petrochemicals, and other industrial products. They are headquartered in the Energy Corridor area of Houston, Texas, and it is a majority owned by PDVSA, a state-owned company of the Venezuelan government. That's according to Wikipedia. Okay. So, this is going to be extremely complicated to discuss, but there was a class action suit by individuals who were harmed by this fluid. Now, this fluid was sold at a whole bunch of outlets, and it was labeled as 303, and that is a nomenclature of a type of tractor hydraulic fluid meeting certain criteria: anti-wear, anti-rust, anti-foaming, those kinds of specifications. Okay, so here's what it says. This is according to ClassActionReports.com. The John Deere 303 designation was over 50 years old by the time that the class action began. It was obsolete, and there were no current specifications for 303 fluid. Second, the complaint by the class action suit says that 303 products lacked some or all of the additives required to provide the benefits claimed for it. In addition, in 2017, the state of Missouri Department of Agriculture tested 14 303 products. That means 14 different brands of products claiming to be meeting the 303 specifications, and found that none of them met any of the current specifications. It found that the complaint said the products were underperforming to the point where damage was likely to result from use. The Department of Agriculture in the state of Missouri said that these products were misbranded because they failed to meet the specifications that were claimed on the container. Now, that means that you buy a product and you think you're buying what it says on the label, and if it doesn't meet those claims, fraud is involved. Okay. The Missouri Department of Agriculture said that any 303 tractor and hydraulic transmission fluid must be pulled from inventory and cannot be sold. And they sent letters, and I have a copy of the letter, to Orscheln. And Orscheln is a farm and home type store. Now, I know for a fact that I was told by an Orscheln employee that, yeah, they had a sign that said, we can't sell this anymore, from printed on their printer in their store. It says, we can't sell this fluid anymore. And the employee said, yeah, we shipped it all over to Arkansas. So here they knew that they had a defective fluid. It was damaging equipment. It was plugging up filters, causing all kinds of problems. Problems that cannot be fixed by cleaning, problems that cannot be fixed. Let me give you an example. This stuff is so bad that it caused transmissions to wear out very quickly. And if you've ever had a manual transmission jump out of gear because you changed the transmission fluid, that's what I'm talking about. How do you operate a tractor or a car when you have a manual transmission? You put it in first gear and second gear and it jumps out of second gear. You put it back in second gear and it jumps out of second gear. You put it in third gear and it jumps out of third gear. What do you do with that transmission? And you realize, wait a minute, it used to work great. What happened? Well, that's what happened to us. And being a preparedness-minded guy and having a preparedness-minded family, we bought pallets of this tractor hydraulic fluid from Orscheln. And being preparedness-minded, we thought, we need to protect our equipment. It's working great, but you know what? We should change this fluid. We haven't changed it in a few years. Let's change all the fluid, all the filters, and we did it. Pallets of this stuff. When I say pallets, this stuff comes in 5-gallon buckets. So we did. We drained all the fluid out, put the new fluid in, and shortly after starting these engines up, we found the transmission, the transmissions were making noise, whining noises out of the gearboxes. The wet brakes, the tractors, large tractors have wet brakes that are bathed in the tractor hydraulic fluid, and the brakes weren't working right. Yeah. So the transmissions weren't shifting right. The gears were making noise. The hydraulic hoses were blowing. The hydraulic seals on the lift cylinders were blowing. And what did this affect? Well, it affected 8 tractors, a track loader, hay balers, hay mowers, everything that we have with hydraulic cylinders, hoses, power steering failed, hydraulic pumps failed. How much is a hydraulic pump? About $2,000 each. That's what happened to us. Any comments about this, Kyle? I've got the documentation. I just want to read a couple paragraphs here and there to just let our class know how big, how pervasive, how ugly, how nasty this scandal was. But do you have any comments so far?
Well, I was curious about something, Vince. You said 14 brands they tested and none of them met those qualifications. I'm wondering, did Citgo make the fluid for all of these different brands?
Yeah, they did. Yep.
And so were those in like auto parts stores? I mean, like
Yep.
were they sold to O'Reilly's and all the rest of them?
I don't have all the list of where they were sold, but okay, here are some of, let's see. This is a lot of paperwork I'm going through, but okay. Consumer Protection Alert, and this is agriculture.mo.gov. So this is a government publication. This is quote, I'm quoting this document. Quote, over the summer, the department sampled 14 different 303 fluids, many claiming to work in almost every tractor. All 14 of these 303 fluids failed to meet current specifications and were found to be underperforming to the point that damage was likely to result from use. End quote. Now, I do have some of the brands. Let's see. Now, they say that it would meet John Deere, Case, New Holland requirements, and that's not true. Here's an internal document from Citgo, and it says here, quote, we have another issue with the 303 oil. Customer is Vincent, and they've got our son's name there. So customer is Vincent, and they've got my phone number, and it listed Marshfield, Missouri. Application Deutz. Deutz is the brand of tractor, DX 4.70. Excessive foaming. Has the consistency of latte. After 5 minutes of runtime, it blow the dipstick out. Now this is, I guess it blow the dipstick out. That's what they said. I think they mean it blew the dipstick out. So please connect with this customer to get full details so we can resolve. Thank you. Happy New Year, Eddie. So that is the email about me complaining to Citgo and talking to their engineering staff about how bad this is at the refinery. So let me see if I can find some more of the brand names. That Mile Master is another one. So it involved Walmart. It involved, let's see, okay, Mile Master is one of them. This is a lot of material to go through. Okay, Mile Master, this is an internal memo. It says, Mile Master 303 level is all flush oil and contaminated base oils. They are saying that they flush the lines, the filthy lines in the refinery with oil. And it's like flushing out a drain. And they can't just let the oil run down the stream. So they capture it. And then what do they do with all this contaminated flush oil? Well, they blend it with something called I'll have to find that, DROM, which stands for Dark Recycled Oil Mix. So they blend the flush oil with dark recycled oil mix at the refinery, put it in buckets, and call it 303 tractor hydraulic fluid. It's all waste products. And it's destroyed farm equipment across the country. We'll be right back. Kyle's with us this morning. We're talking about the 303 tractor hydraulic fluid and the scandal and the criminality involved. And I do have your answer, Kyle. Before we get to that, I'm trying to go in order and with these pages, but there's one statement that says, and this is an internal memo or email at Citgo. I have a problem with this product information sheet application. I don't see how we can recommend this fluid with reused oil for use in wet brake applications. Now, what are wet brakes? Well, wet brakes are like your car has brakes, but they're cooled in the differential with oil. So the idea is that your brakes will last a lot longer in tractors. Now, they don't use wet brakes in cars, but they use them in tractors. And the idea is that they'll last a lot longer. And tractors have a lot of weight, and therefore they get really hot. The brakes get really hot, so that's why they use wet brakes. There's something, here's another, and this is a quote, and this is internal correspondence, Citgo. Quote, just between us, do you realize that there is almost certainly black sediment in the bottom of nearly every single container that we fill of 303 fluid yet? Yes? Just between us, do you realize that there's almost certainly black sediment at the bottom of nearly every single container that we fill of 303 fluid? Yes. The question is, do you understand that? Yes, that's true. Goes on, so how much of this dark recycled oil mix did Citgo have? Well, in one tank, 420,000 gallons, another tank, 420,000 gallons, another tank, 107,000 gallons, another tank, 20,000 gallons. So the inventory of DROM, dark recycled oil mix, 618,000 gallons. And what are they using in it? Bar and chain oil and 303 tractor hydraulic fluid. Okay. So, where is it? Where is this DROM used? Well, it's used in Harvest King 303. And here are the complaints. Harvest King 303, full of black sludge. Supertech. Now, who sells Supertech? That'd be the Chinese factory outlet. Supertech 303, bucket full of black sludge and material. Big R, selling Harvest King 303, full of black sludge. Now, this is internal communications at Citgo. Orscheln, black sludge in 303. Residue at the bottom of all pails of Milemaster 303. And there's another one, Family Farm and Home, black sludge in Orscheln 303. Orscheln, contaminated Orscheln 303. Another one, Orscheln, sediment in the bottom of the 303 pails. So, Supertech, that's the Chinese factory outlet. And then there's, Harvest King, and there is, Milemaster, for sure. I mean, there are more, but those are the ones I've got in front of me. So what did they decide to do? They have said, internal correspondence, that the 303 tractor hydraulic fluid, complaints have moved from specks in the fluid to residue in the fluid to sludge in the fluid. We had pallets of fluid with sludge. It also says customers are now becoming more vocal at Orscheln. Okay. It says we sure seem to have had a rash of unhappy customers of late. This is what Citgo's saying about their product. Complaints more frequently coupled with damage claims. Walmart end user, $9,600 to replace pump and transmission. Mm-hmm. New industry scrutiny on 303 quality. And then, of course, the state of Missouri is coming down on forcing them to stop selling it completely. So those are some of the things that I have in front of me. Here's another one.
Hey, Vince.
Yes.
When I worked around the oil refinery for quite a few years. And the thing I remember, and I didn't hear you mention it there, but when they're purging lines like that, the reason you've got that black sludge, I think, is because there's some kind of a solvent that's got a powerful surfactant to it. And if they're mixing that in the hydraulic fluid that they're selling, then it would make sense to me that it would be washing the lubricant off of your wet brakes or off of any components in the system.
Right. Kyle, that was a great question about the surfactants in the line flush oil. Well, this did damage wet brakes. Here's what happened. The fluid was contaminated with sludge, and the top of the bucket was black. So you couldn't see, it had a pour spout. You couldn't see what was coming out of the pour spout. And so what we found out was, as soon as we put this in, and we put in all of our equipment, and we spent like days getting everything ready, changed all the fluid, the filters, put it in, and then we started having problems. And in class, if you remember, years ago, I talked about we're blowing hydraulic hoses like crazy. What's going on? Hydraulic seals, hydraulic cylinders, power steering cylinders, all kinds of cylinders and hoses. And we took videos of this. We had videos of, starting the tractor up, and out of the differential would come foam. And so it was a real problem. And then it was such a big problem that if you wanted to buy the repair is find some other fluid. And so we did research and we did that. But we had to replace the hydraulic filters, the transmission filters. All of those things had to be replaced. And there was such a big problem that you couldn't get the filters because there was a run on the filters because of all the damage that these Citgo oils did. What they did was they plugged up the filters with the sludge, so that when you went to use your hydraulic, like lift arms, front end loader, etc., they didn't work. Power steering didn't work because the fluid couldn't get into the power steering system to push those hydraulic cylinders. This was a massive, massive problem. And so we were contacted by an attorney who said, hey, I found your name and your number in Citgo's correspondence. He was doing the investigation for the class action suit. And they found us, so he called. And I said, I've got it all. I've got pallets of the fluid. I've got the empty buckets with the sludge in it. I've got the filters that are plugged up with the sludge. I've got the metal shavings on the filters of the damage of the transmissions. I've got the blown seals, the blown hoses. I have sealed buckets of fluid with sludge in the bottom. I've got the receipts. I have the videos. I've got the pictures. I have it all. And they were all excited because we had the most complete case of damning evidence against Citgo and Orscheln in the country. We had it. And then, so he said, fill out this form and put in your claim for all the damage, delineate the damage in the hoses and etc. And so we submitted that, and Citgo denied it. Citgo said, we're not paying the claim. I said, that's great. I am delighted, because now I want to go to court and I want to sue them. And I want to bring every member. I want to subpoena the board of directors of Citgo, the CEO and all the vice presidents, and the same with Orscheln. I want them all there, and we'll spend weeks together. I'm looking forward to eviscerating them in court. And you know what they did? They decided to settle. And so the question that some of you are thinking and have not asked yet is, where in the ranking system was the Finelli family farm in terms of damage done by this defective, fraudulently labeled tractor hydraulic fluid? Where in the ranking? We're in the top 10 in the country in terms of damage. Our neighbors have been damaged. And so here is, let me just read this, and then Kyle, please ask all your questions and make all your comments. The Missouri statute 413.115 states, quote, defective business practices prohibited. A person commits a crime of deceptive business practice in the course of engaging in the business, occupation, or profession, he or she recklessly sells, offers, or exposes for sale misbranded commodities. End quote. That's a crime. Okay. And then they say and this is a letter, from the Missouri, Department of Agriculture, state of Missouri, at the Missouri Capitol to Orscheln. You, quote, you are hereby ordered to remove this product for sale until changes are made to correct the labeling of this product, or labeling or the product. Specification and certification information must validate any performance claims on your packaging labeling. Suitably for use claims shall be based upon appropriate field, bench, and or transmission rig testing. Performance claims include, but not limited to, those set by the original equipment manufacturers and standard setting organizations such as ASTM or SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers. So that was signed by the division director of Department of Agriculture for the state of Missouri. And this bucket of Orscheln tractor hydraulic fluid is labeled Orscheln Farm and Home, answers and low prices down every aisle, premium, in big letters, 303, tractor hydraulic and transmission fluid. And it goes on to say that the application was for Alice Chalmers, Ferguson, White, Allison, Caterpillar, Ford, New Holland, John Deere, Kubota, Case, and I can't read the others. So they say it's for use in these tractors, and it was nothing but waste products. Kyle?
Wow. Somebody should have went to jail over that, not just monetary, but it seems like in every industry that this country is in, Vince, that the defective, worthless Chinese type mentality of doing stuff the cheapest, absolute worthless way has infected everything, doesn't it?
Okay. Since you mentioned that, I was working on our high pressure washer yesterday, and I put a new carburetor in it months ago. I got a carburetor on eBay, put a new carburetor on it, worked great, and put it in the barn for a couple months, took it out, and you would think it'd be okay. The carburetor needle and seat was stuck closed. So I thought, what the heck is going on? So I took it apart, and it's a Chinese carburetor. It looks just like the original. It's a Honda engine, okay? And the original carburetor lasted, maybe 5 years. This one lasted a couple months. And what happened was they made the needle and seat, the housing for the needle is brass, as it should be. The shaft for the seat, for the needle, is made out of aluminum, and it corroded and swelled so that it would not operate up and down and allow fuel to be delivered to the carburetor. I am just livid. And the inside of the fuel bowl, after 2 months, is corroded, and it has all this white aluminum oxide or cadmium oxide on it. And these things are carburetors now are use once and throw away. Use once and throw away. That's how bad this has become. I'm livid.
Oh, it's interesting. I hope I didn't get one of those. I bought a FS55R steel straight shaft weed eater at a garage sale for $10 because the guy could not get it running. And it was interesting. I ordered a new carburetor for it because I could tell this one wasn't working. It was all gummed up inside. And I got another one. It's coming. It should be here today or tomorrow. But it was only like $10.70 to get it delivered to the house. So with free shipping. So anyway, I'm hoping I didn't end up with one of those. Vince,
they look great.
That I found,
Kyle, when you get it and you hold it in your hand, you can say, this looks great on the surface. And that's what I said. I bought 2 of them. The only reason I get this pressure washer running today is because I'm going to use the other new one once. I'm furious. And there's no recourse. You beat up the guy on eBay who's selling these things. By the time you use it and it fails, you can't comment any longer on it. And the other thing is there's no brand. You can't say it's defective Citgo. You can't say it's defective any other brand because there's no brand on these. And if you do get one from a guy who says it's premium, it'd be like, premium? You mean like Citgo premium tractor hydraulic fluid, that kind of premium? You can't tell the quality of the products you're buying from China anymore because most of them are not branded and they don't come from the same factory. So some may be okay. Most of them I don't think are okay, but you can't tell. So what do? I don't know. I really don't know.
Vince, I had that temperature sensor go out on my 92 Toyota car that I have. And because the one that I had in there was the original coolant temperature sensor. Well, the computer uses that information in order to complete the circuit to allow the car to start. at whatever calculations the computer puts the fuel system at. Well, the original one lasted from 1992 to 2021. Okay, so 39 years this thing had lasted. I put a brand new one in there thinking, well, man, this is a simple little old thing. And not even 60 days later, it wouldn't start when it's cold. And so I took it back, took it out. Luckily, it's really super easy. Takes a 3/4 inch socket and you pop it off there, pull a plug and you can pop it off and put another one in. But I had to go to town in my pickup to do it. And so I drove the 25 miles into town, got another one. They gave me another one, no problem. Put it back on, started right up, no problem. But that quick, it didn't even last 40, be generous, it didn't even last 60 days.
Right. So what happened with this carburetor is I took it all apart and I cleaned it up, put it back together, and I turned on I drained the fuel bowl to make sure there's no residue and no contamination in the fuel bowl from the gas tank. And we put a fuel filter in all of our small equipment. It doesn't come with it, but we add a fuel filter and a shutoff valve. So yesterday I turned on the fuel shutoff valve. I opened it up and see how the carburetor would leak. Turned around, it's leaking all over the floor. So I went from a carburetor that wouldn't allow any fuel past the needle and seat to one that wouldn't stop the fuel from overflowing the carburetor. So here's why I'm mentioning that. And I've been talking about diluted engine oil with you on the air, how you need to smell the dipstick, right? To see if there is if the engine oil is contaminated with fuel, because fuel is getting past the carburetor and diluting the engine oil, and it will destroy the engine. Honda. What is Honda's plan for CRV and Civic oil dilution? The 1.5 engine allowing fuel to leak into the crankcase where it mixes with the engine oil. This is what it said. This is the article. The diluted mixture raises the level of the oil in the pan, which can lead to serious engine damage. The problem has caused a wide range of responses from different countries, including stop sales and service campaigns depending on where you live. So Honda is having the same darn problem that I've been discussing here. And what are they doing? The only thing they're doing is extending the warranty. They're not fixing the problem. They're just extending the warranty, hoping you won't even notice. We'll be right back. This is a real serious problem. So Honda has a problem with their cars. And let me explain it this way. So if you have a carburetor, and there's a fuel metering system and a fuel level system as part of the carburetor, and that system that maintains the fuel level in the fuel bowl of your carburetor, so your carburetor can through vacuum pull the fuel through some metering rods and mix it with air. If that level gets too high in the fuel bowl, the only place it seems to go is into the engine, and it slides down through the valves, goes past this into the combustion chamber, down past the rings, the piston rings, into the crankcase. And so what happens is, if you check your oil level and it seems to be increasing, and you didn't add any oil, you have a problem with something going into your oil, whether it be antifreeze or fuel. Now, if it's fuel is the opposite. Gasoline is the opposite of a lubricant. Gasoline is a solvent for lubricant. So if you have gasoline entering your crankcase, and your crankcase holds the oil for lubricating the engine, and gasoline is diluting that engine oil, you have less lubrication, and you will wear out your engine very, very quickly. So what does Honda say? Well, Honda says that although Honda in China stated in a press release that this issue would not cause engine damage, I believe that the oil analysis report provides evidence to the contrary. End quote of what I was reading. What I'm saying is Honda's saying it's not a big deal. It's not going to cause engine damage. Kyle, do you think diluted engine oil with gasoline would damage an engine?
Oh, that's like a no-brainer, Vince. To jump back to your hydraulic problem again, though, and I'm sure you know, but I don't know if the listeners know, you're going to have hours of trying to pump to get that fluid out of the hydraulic cylinders, the lines, the pumps, and the crankcase of these things, or the, not crankcase, but the, a hydraulic holding area. You're going to have hours involved in every single vehicle you own. I hope they made you, I hope they had to pay through the nose, for your sake and take all of that junk back. I can't even fathom that. And if somebody has to take this into the dealership or a repair company to have this done, they're going to be looking at thousands of dollars by the time they get all said and done for each piece of equipment.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it took us weeks, literally, Kyle, weeks to drain this stuff out. The minute we recognized it, we had to buy, first we researched that. Does anybody actually make oil that is suitable? That was one thing. So I wanted to see the test analysis, and we found a company called U.S. Lubricants, and we looked at their test results, and we bought a trailer load of oil because we had to flush out the old oil, replace the filters, flush it out again, replace the filters, just so we could get to the point where we could get the equipment to sort of work. That's after replacing the hydraulic cylinders, the hoses, and we still have a bunch of equipment that has not been repaired. And the damage is so expensive that, you'd say, well, just fix it and then, worry about the claim later. No, the damage is so expensive that we couldn't fix it because we didn't have the money. How much are we talking about? Over $100,000 in damage. Over $100,000. And these guys would not pay 100% of the claim. They only paid a percentage of the claim. Now, how much was the claim? The whole class action suit was $18.5 million. Doesn't sound like a lot. The attorneys got $5.9 million. Anybody who had a claim got $5,000. Now, let's just say you had one old tractor. Let's say it's a Ford 3000 tractor, and it was damaged. The transmission was damaged. Could you repair the transmission and the hydraulic system and the differential for $5,000? The answer is no.
Not even close.
Right. So then you say, I'll tell you what, I'll just buy another one. Let me go to Craigslist and find another, 1974 tractor to replace it with. The odds are probably darn close to 100% that the tractor that you'd buy on Craigslist would have exactly the same problem that, the tractor you're trying to replace has. Because all of this fluid came, or almost all of it came from Citgo. And whether it said it was Supertech, we can trust the Chinese factory outlet, right? Well, they would never do this, would they? Orscheln would never do this, would they? Smitty's would never do this. Mile Marker would never do this. No. It says premium on the bucket. And it says it meets the standards, for these pieces of equipment. Even show a modern tractor on the bucket. It's all fraud. And I know we didn't get to talking about how to buy a used car. We can do that next time, Kyle. I'd love to do that with you. Sure. But this scandal is so big, and I wanted our class to know that it's so big, and it's not just tractor hydraulic fluid. It's everywhere. Kyle, last minute comments?
No, Vince, I feel so bad for you. I don't know what to do. I mean, it's just some way, there's got to be a way to make these people pay bad.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's a song about it. It's called Hang 'em High.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
I'm with you.
And I'm delighted to be broadcasting with my dear friend. And I thought it'd be interesting for the class to meet another one of my friends and our family's friends. And his name is Stuart, and he's a farmer. He's one of the hardest working guys I know. And he had a tough go of it, and he mentioned that his mom left at age 8 when he was on a farm in Florida, and his dad died when he was 15. And the bank was kind enough to sell everything he had, including his bicycle, because he was the only one left in the family to run the farm at age 15. The bank helped by eliminating everything that he had in his whole world. And he got 37 cents and was able to get kicked off the farm with 37 cents in his pocket. Welcome, Stuart.
Hi, how you doing?
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, pretty much. There was some money in the house, but I had to take care of the farm for 30 days until they had the auction. So, the feed company wouldn't send out feed on credit. I had to pay cash. So by the time the day of the auction was held, that was what I had left, was 37 cents. That's what I went to town with to get a job.
Mm-hmm. Now, this feed, so tell us what kind of a farm you had. What were you raising?
It was beef cattle. It was cattle ranch.
Okay. And so did you have an account with the feed store, kind of like people here in Missouri have accounts with the local cooperative feed store, where you just say, here's what I need, and they send you a monthly statement and you pay it? Is that what, did you have one of those?
Yeah, that's what my dad had, but when he passed away, all that ended. Nobody's was gonna keep sending feed out, not knowing if they were gonna get paid or not.
That's ridiculous. It's so absolutely ridiculous.
It was, it wasn't a big deal. There was, maybe $100 around the house, but I ended up spending it. I didn't have the forethought to think about what was going to happen to me after the place was auctioned off. I mean, it was, you're 15 and you're in shock. It's not. Well, you just
lost your father.
All I knew to do was, I still had like 2 weeks of school left, so I did the chores. I got on the school bus. I went to school, came home, got off the bus, did the chores, went to bed. If I needed feed, they'd deliver it, but I'd have to pay the driver, in cash. And that was
so the trust that they had with your family and the business that all the years that you bought from them, that just went away when your father died, right?
Yeah, everything changed. There just wasn't, and you got to look at it from my standpoint. I was 15 years old. I didn't even know who to talk to. A guy from the bank came out a few days after everybody left after the funeral, and said, "We're gonna," he explained to me that my dad had money borrowed from the bank for the place, and that they were going to auction it off, to get the money to pay the debts off. And so I was.
Did they give you an opportunity to? Did they say, Stuart, look, we know this is tough. We'd like to work with you. How about if we, get somebody from the bank to kind of coach you and advise you and counsel you, and maybe you can keep it all together and keep the family farm? Did they do that?
No, that's the kicker. See, my parents never divorced. So my mother lived in Chicago. She came down for the funeral, so I'm sure they talked to her, and it was all set up through her, and if there was money left over after everything was paid, I'm sure she got it. I don't know that for a fact.
Wow.
And
I as you were telling that story, I was thinking about if that happened to me, and without mentioning our sons' names, I never mentioned the boys' first names nor Mrs. Finelli's first name. I just call them, our sons on the radio, because I don't want people to know the names. But I can just envision our son, if I were to pass away, and our son, called up the feed store that we've been doing business with, since the day we got here. If they said to him, listen, we can't, it's going to have to be cash. I have a feeling there'd be some broken noses. Do you think our son would just, what do you think he would do, Stuart?
Well,
you know him pretty well.
He's a grown man too, so.
Yes.
There's a big difference between being a 15-year-old kid that's, I lived a good life, but it was isolated. you had a few friends, but you lived out in the country. You went to town once a week. That was,
and that's the way it still is, right? That's the way it is for us, if we go to town at all.
In fact, I've stretched it out to 2 weeks where I don't have to go to town. Try and do everything on every other Friday. Go to the MFA store, buy my feed, go to Walmart over in Marshfield, buy my groceries, and I've got it, figured out how much I need for 2 weeks. Unless something special happens, that's it. I'll perfectly content to go 2 weeks without leaving the place.
So, Stuart, you have an occasion to listen to this broadcast. You've been to the farm a number of times, and we've been to your farm a number of times. The lifestyle that we live, that you've seen us live, the lifestyle that you live is one of preparedness. Before you go to town, it's what, 50-mile round trip typically. So, you have a list, you figure out before you go, days and days and days before you go, put on the list what you need. That way you make sure that you get it while you're out, and you make the trip count, and you've got, 4 or 5 stops, 6 stops while you're out there. You make it all count, and then you come home. And then a couple weeks later, you do it again. That's the lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Rather
it
than,
exactly. It's I try and get a haircut once a month, so that'll be on the list, and just go to Oregon.
have you?
if they've got something that I need, that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So,
but you were telling me a story. You were telling me a little bit of a story yesterday when you were here with the load of gravel that you brought. You're telling me about another guy whose name will be not mentioned. He had a problem with that Orscheln 303 tractor hydraulic fluid too, didn't he?
Yeah. But he told me he got a check from him for something. I don't know how much or anything, but
I wasn't asking that. I didn't want to ask that. But do you know? Did he ever mention what kind of damage he had to his equipment?
No, never did.
But he's got a lot of equipment. He's got a lot of equipment.
Well, he's got a couple of tractors and hay equipment. So. And I don't know if he used it in any of his construction equipment because he's got a backhoe and a skid steer loader and a dump truck. That kind of stuff. I don't know if he ever used it in any of that, but he did get a check because he was familiar with it. He was familiar with it. I was telling him about your problem.
Yeah. What was his reaction?
He said, "Oh yeah, I know about that." He said, "In fact, I got a check from him for all that yellow bucket stuff I bought."
Right. And what happened is Orscheln /Sitco was sending out payments to reimburse you for the cost of the fluid that you bought, but they weren't necessarily sending out checks for the damage. So if you bought a defective product, they'd say, well, it sold between $20 and $30 a bucket. So here is, and I don't know the exact number, but it might have been whatever you paid for it. They probably paid you whatever you paid for it. But that didn't include draining it out, taking out the filters, the damage, flushing the system, all the extra damage that it caused. None of that was included, the hoses, etc. So that $20 to $30 a bucket was nothing. But I'll tell you what I did do, Stuart. After it was all over, after the class action suit was all over, I had some buckets, yellow buckets of this unopened stuff left over. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? I can't put it in our tractors because it'll destroy them. The only thing I can do is light it on fire. That's the only thing it's good for.
Careful,
and I didn't want to do that.
EPA down on you.
Right.
Or
so here's
or whoever it is,
Right. So I wanted to be responsible, but I had these sealed buckets. I had the buckets of the used fluid that we drained out. I had the buckets of the new fluid that we never opened. I had some partial buckets where we, didn't use exactly a 5-gallon amount for each tractor. We, use 5 gallons plus. So we had some, partially open buckets. So I called Orschel and I said, so what do we do with this? And they said, bring it to us and we'll recycle it. And we'll replace it bucket for bucket. So all the extra buckets of this stuff I had, I didn't want this because what am I going to do with pallets of buckets of a product that is defective or contains metal shavings because it came out of our tractors? What am I going to do with it? So they said, bring it to us and we'll replace it with new stuff. I said, well, who makes the new stuff? Is it Citgo? They said, oh, no. No, we don't, it's not made by Citgo. It's made by another company. They didn't tell me who, but they said it meets the claims on the bucket this time. Now, I don't know if it does or not. So they swapped out, 2 truckloads, 2 pickup truckloads of buckets that we brought them that was, defective and contaminated and had sludge in it and all the rest of the complaints. I mean, we had every complaint that they had. I mean, we met all the criteria for the claims that people had. We had all of them. And it was all bona fide. And we even said, here's an empty bucket. We're saving this just for you to look at. And we brought a flashlight and we said, shine this flashlight through the bottom of the yellow bucket and look through the spout and you'll see the sludge in the bottom. And the store, employees couldn't believe the amount of sludge that was in the bottom of the buckets. And they had sealed buckets that have never been opened. So they can check for themselves to see how bad this stuff really is. And it's all true. So, Stuart, I thought of this as an attack and a takedown, a slow takedown of the American farmer by not the general farmer would not be able to figure out why the hoses were breaking, the hydraulic hoses, the hydraulic seals, the hydraulic lift cylinders, the power steering cylinders, the power steering pumps, the hay equipment, the hay mower, lift arms, all that is run on the same hydraulic fluid from the tractor. And I don't think the average farmer figured out exactly what the cause was, but it was Citgo. And I think it was a takedown. And as you say,
you about Citgo whenever the
all right, let's talk about it when we come back. Stuart's with us, and Stuart's a family friend. He's also a neighbor and farmer. Stuart, you mentioned Citgo. Please continue.
Okay, Citgo. You think that Citgo is an American company, right? American owned?
Well, no, it's not. It's not.
No, it's owned by Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., which is the Venezuelan government's petroleum. I don't know what you call it, but it's like a government agency that after they formed OPEC and they naturalized took over all of the refineries and the oil operations in Venezuela. They bought it for pennies on the dollars from all the companies that were down there doing that. And they just took it. It was a government takeover of the oil industry in Venezuela back in the 70s. And Citgo.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it used to be called City Service. Right.
City Service. Used to be a gas station, chain of gas stations, City Service gas stations. And Citgo is actually owned or controlled by that. I'm sure the stock's probably traded on one of the exchanges, but the major the control of the company is by the Venezuelan government. And as you know, or I don't know if you keep up the news about foreign countries, but Venezuela was the longest lasting democracy in South America. And then these, I guess they were socialists or something. Anyhow, they were aligned with Fidel Castro. Took over politics down there. And everything changed. They aren't a friend of ours. So, if you want a conspiracy theory, they wouldn't see anything wrong with using the flushings out of the refinery to put it into cans to sell to Americans. They don't like us.
Right.
You know, it's just strictly politics. It's the same as the Chinese. You know, they're just overtly, you know, sending us junk that doesn't work, where you have to buy more junk from them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, Stuart, you mentioned MFA, and MFA stands for Missouri Farm Association, and it's a cooperative, allegedly, where farmers go and buy their feed and their fencing supplies and quantities of dog food and seeds and hypodermic needles for injectables for cattle and other animals, and supplies that farmers would generally need to run their business. Plus, they have emergency kinds of things like plumbing supplies and electrical supplies and things like that. So that is MFA. Now, MFA, I went there years ago. I fell out with them over some defective products that they made, and it used to be that they had a guy running the department of the purchasing department, and they would buy quality products, and they would make sure that they were farm tough. Well, I bought some, and then I bought some more fence posts, and they would bend. And I'd say, look at this. And I'd walk in with this in my hand, and I'd say, look, it bends. And they laughed. And I said, you guys are selling this junk. And you don't pay attention anymore. You used to have people who'd make sure that the products were really good, and that guys like me wouldn't come in with these defective products. And they just laughed. And I said, what are you going to do about it? And they didn't know what to do about it. And I said, close my account. I was livid with these guys because we have hundreds and hundreds of these step-in curlicue top fence posts. They used to be made by a company called Gallagher. They had an orange curlicue on the top. Then there's another brand called Zariba. They were yellow curlicues. And then they came out with, MFA came out with their own brand. I think it's called Herdsman. They're made in China. And these things are coming apart. They're rusting like crazy, and they bend. They're absolute junk. They look the same, except for the color of the top, but they're junk. And so, anyway, that's one story about them. The other story is I went to buy bulk fertilizer, like, a couple tons at a time. And they said, no, we can't sell that. We're not selling it anymore. We won't be able to sell it for a year. And I said, why? And they said, well, our scale was not working properly, and the Missouri state shut them down. What do you think that means? That's my dear friend Stuart's with us. Stuart, I mentioned that MFA told me firsthand that I couldn't get fertilizer because their scales were shut down by the state. They didn't say, well, we thought we were selling a ton of fertilizer, and actually it was a ton and a quarter or a ton and a half. I don't think the state would shut them down for that. I think it was for under or overstating what the scales were delivering, something like that. Meaning you're expecting a ton, and you actually were delivered less than that. Have you heard stories like that, Stuart?
Oh, well, the problem with MFA is that it's not locally controlled anymore. See, the MFA here in Grove used to was independent. All the MFA stores were independent, and they had their own board of directors that were elected by the members. And so, you had an MFA store here in Grove, you had one in Hartville, you had one in Mansfield, one in Mountain Grove. But now, the MFA store here in Grove was ran by Marshfield for a while, and then somehow Lebanon took it over. So Lebanon controls Richland, Lebanon, Conway, and Grove. And so you don't. I have no idea who the board of directors or the directors are of the Lebanon Co-op, which owns our local co-op.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it's billed as a membership owned cooperative, meaning if you want to buy from there, you have to be a member. Yeah. And it's like a club. And what's happening is, so they actually are selling defective substandard parts, and the scale is off to the club members. And so have you heard this too about the scale or not?
No, I didn't hear about the scale thing, but I do know, because we were dairy farmers, and when we first came here back in the early '80s, started milking. I tried to buy feed from MFA for a while, but every load that we got our feed delivered in bulk, and it went into a loft up above the dairy barn, and we had automatic feeders. You just dial a little dial, and that was the number of pounds of feed that came out into the feeder below for the dairy cow to eat while you were milking her. And I noticed that every so often you'd get a load of feed and the cows would go off feed. Well, dairy cows don't like anything that tastes different. They get used to something, and they like the way it tastes. You change it, and they'll just quit eating it. They won't eat it. You can starve them into submission, but by the time you starve a dairy cow into submission, she's quit milking.
So what do you think it was that caused the cows not to?
Well, I found out what it was by talking to the extension service. And MFA feed formulas were changed based on the price of the commodity.
So the standard...
They would change what they were putting in the feed to buy something cheaper. And so which would throw your dairy cows off feed. And then you'd be, sitting there scratching your head wondering why your milk production was down.
So their greed affected your output, which affected your income, and they never told you that the feed percentages of ingredients was constantly changing based on the prices of the ingredients to MFA.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which was why my wife switched over to Purina. We'd have our feed brought out here from the Purina mill in Springfield. Mm-hmm. It cost us more, but it was the same thing. Every shipment was the same thing. Mm-hmm. For years. When we quit milking, we were feeding Purina feed.
So the story about the MFA feed is so similar to the story about the Citgo tractor hydraulic fluid. It's
yeah. I mean, it's but you don't know it. The thing is, you don't know any of this stuff. So you're out here. You're a farmer. I was lucky enough to be married to a very tenacious woman who loved her dairy cows. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if it had anything to do with the dairy, she researched, she was the one that found that out by calling the University of Missouri College of Agriculture up in Columbia, and mm-hmm. talking to nutritional mm-hmm. specialists. Yeah. And it's the same thing. You don't know who's running the show, really, and all these co-ops, cooperatives. I was a big supporter of cooperatives, because they had them. Farmers had them. It was your only weapon, I guess, you against big business. It was the only way you could kind of think that you were getting a fair shake. But that was all you were doing, was thinking you were getting a fair shake. We sold our milk to Mid-America Dairymen, and that I could talk all day on Mid-America Dairymen. You would think that they would represent the dairy farmers, but they didn't. Because anytime a cooperative gets big enough to start hiring management, outside management, the board of directors gets whittled down to yes men who will go along with whatever management. You know, it's kind of like the electric co-op and that Mark Roker guy. You know,
Yeah,
the board of directors on our electric co-op, they just approve whatever he comes up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and he's an accountant.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
but I had a question for you.
Sure.
So, as you look at things that have happened to us as farmers, and farmers have to pay attention, do you see more and more scams? I'm talking about the electric cooperative. I'm talking about MFA. I'm talking about Citgo. You know, a lot of things that we rely on. Do you see more and more of them?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like the electric co-op. You know, now you've got what they call a service availability charge of $27, no matter how much electricity you use. But what they say, well, we've got the cheapest electric rates around. You know, it's what, 8 cents a kilowatt or whatever it is. You know, and you know, so the $27, the more electricity you use, the less, you know, the less the $27 bothers you. But if you're like me, my electric usage for this past month is 705 kilowatts.
So your bill is about $100.
So they're going to multiply that times 8.6 cents. And then they're going to add the $27 to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not paying 8.6 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm paying a lot more than that because they're adding $27.
Right. And service availability class, that is a deceptive term for we're going to charge you for the electric meter. That's what that is. It's a meter charge. Because it used to be that my grandparents, I saw their electric bills. They were like $7 a month. And there was no charge for the meter. It's like going to the gas station and its sign says $2.59.9. And then you go and dump, you know, the gas into your tank, and then it does a final calculation. It says, okay, you bought 10 gallons at $2.59.9 per gallon, and then we have a gasoline availability charge of $27 added to the cost of the gasoline. That's what these electric companies are doing. That's what Laclede Electric is doing. And they have convinced people to thinking that the electric rate here in Missouri is lower than the national average. It's just a little bit lower. And they say that, you know, we're a little lower in our area than Laclede is a little lower than the average in Missouri, just a little bit lower. We should be the lowest, the absolute lowest, because electricity, I know how much it costs. I ran for the board of directors 4 times. You know that, Stuart. You signed my petition. I got nowhere.
4 times.
Yeah, I got nowhere. And by the way, no one, I asked the CEO, Mark Rocker, the guy who you mentioned, I asked him one time when I was running, has anyone who is running from a petition, meaning someone who is not endorsed and selected to run for the board of directors, has anyone who has not been selected by the nominating committee to run for the board, has anyone ever won? And the answer is no. And including me. I've never won either. So it's impossible. It's stacked against you. And if you think that you can run for the board of directors for one of these little organizations or a big organization, you're kidding yourself. If you think you can be president, you're kidding yourself. That's a lie. You cannot become president of the United States because you're born in America and you're over 35 years old. And you think that, you know, you've got a good idea. You have to be groomed and endorsed and supported and put on the path for it when you're very, very young. And just growing up in America and having a great idea and working hard, forget it. It's not going to happen. Stuart, you started out with 37 cents. Will you tell a story about what happened after that?
Oh, well, I had to go to town and get a job.
Mm-hmm. Right.
One of the ranchers that was at the auction was leaving the auction as I was walking off the farm. I didn't stay for the whole auction. Once they, like I said, they auctioned off my bicycle, my bed, and my horse. There wasn't no reason to stay around. I figured it was over and I needed to get a job because I didn't have any place to stay or any money.
I want to make sure everybody gets credit for this. Do you have the name of that bank? Do you remember that name of that bank?
What was it?
Well, we're going into a break, and we'll have our last segment after the break. If you get a chance, if you can remember the name of the bank, we'll just state it and give those guys credit for selling your bed, your bicycle, and your horse.
Well, they sold everything else too.
Yeah, and throwing you out with 37 cents. They need credit for that, and I'd like to make sure that we give it to them. Stuart's with me. Stuart, do you know the name of that bank?
It became South Seminole Bank.
South Seminole Bank in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you had 37 cents in your pocket, and they showed you the driveway and said, get off the farm. Then what happened?
Well, no, I just left. There wasn't no reason to stay. I knew it was over.
Yeah.
So I just, I had some clothes and a little AWOL bag.
Yeah. And what'd you do?
Just started walking to the gate, got out by the road.
Mm-hmm.
A rancher that my dad knew and that I knew, was leaving. Evidently there wasn't anything there that he wanted to buy. And he gave me a ride to town. He asked me what I was going to do. Just told him I needed to get a job. And he took me to town, and Sanford was a big produce producing area, the celery capital of the world at one time. And he took me to a packing house where they packed and shipped produce. And he dropped me off out front, and he said, go in and ask for Harold whenever, give me 30 minutes and go in and ask for Harold. So I hung around outside for 30 minutes and went inside and asked for Harold. And I got a job loading trucks for 60 cents an hour with a hand cart. And that was back when produce was packed in wooden crates and fishnet bags, 50 pounds to a deal. And you loaded trucks by hand, and then they took them across the street to the ice house and blew ice in on top of them. Because the refrigeration units for trucking back then wasn't all that great. So every place had an ice house where they'd crush the ice and blow it up into the semi on top of the crate. That's how I got started. 60 cents an hour.
How many cents? 60?
60 cents.
Yeah. And now this man that said, gave you the ride and said, wait 30 minutes. Do you think he went inside and, paved the way for you to get a job?
Well, I know that now. He went home and called him. Because they knew I was coming in.
That was nice of him.
And, so.
It was.
I mean, I owe everything to that one guy, because I had no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so you had the job, you were making 60 cents an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you live?
Well, I stayed in the packing house. They had a little room where they, had, burlap bags and the fishnet bags that they put the cabbage into. And they were stacked up in there, so I just made a bed in there. The place had a shower room for the truckers to use, while they were waiting to get loaded. And I stayed there. And then...
Did they know you were staying there?
He was a little older than me, and he lived in a rooming house. So when I got paid, he took me down there, and I got a room in the rooming house that he stayed in.
Now, did the packing house know that you were staying there, or was that on the QT?
No, see, because we had to work. We'd go to work at 11 o'clock in the morning and load trucks. The reason we went in at 11 was because they'd be picking. You know, the stuff had to be picked and then brought into the packing house and then packed. So they weren't ready to load trucks until about 11 o'clock in the morning. And you'd...
Okay, then what happened? After that, you worked there for a while, then what happened?
Well, a friend of mine that I knew, I just happened to run into him one Sunday. And it was getting to be school time. See, I was still 15. You couldn't quit school down there until you turned 16. So I wasn't going to be 16 until October. So I was kind of worried about getting caught, you know. I didn't know what had happened, if they'd arrest me or, you know, what. But anyways, I run into Tim, and he went home and told his mother what happened. And they come and got me, and I went and lived with them for the next 2 years till I finished high school.
That was wonderful.
Got a job. And you know, the only thing she said was, you got to go to church on Sunday. With us.
You got to go to church on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's not too hard. That's pretty nice story. Stuart, we're going to have to finish the story. We ran out of time. But I'd love to hear the rest of the story. And you know, you now drive, you had your own tractor, and you and your wife drove, and I'd love to hear the rest of that story. That'd be great. So I'll let you know what the schedule looks like, and I'm going to see you this afternoon, right? You're going to bring some stone over?
Yeah, I've got one more load to haul to you.
Yeah, Stuart's holding 100,000 pounds of stone to us. Yeah, no kidding.